If you are a high achieving woman, you are succeeding in your business life, in your career life, but you do not have a healthy masculine man who is cherishing you, taking care of you, then this is a video that you want to stick around for. This is a problem that so many women like you have experienced, where you are able to succeed in so many areas of your life. You are so good at succeeding. But then when it comes time to have a really healthy, amazing relationship with a man, you can't figure out what is going wrong. You're either not attracting really healthy masculine men, you keep attracting more emasculated weak men, which don't work out, or when you do find a really great man, maybe it starts out okay at first, and then something seems to go wrong sooner or later. We are going to be talking about exactly why this is happening to you and what you can do about it so that you can have the kind of love, kind of cherishing, the kind of adoration that you need and deserve in your love life from a healthy masculine man. I'm going to introduce myself before we get started. My name is Zach Rohde. I am here to lead you into creating the relationship of your dreams using your feminine energy and what I call feminine communication to inspire a man into cherishing you. And today I have on the lovely TC. She's going to introduce herself and we're going to both be talking about this today. Go ahead, TC.
Hello, my name is Tisi, and I help women feel their feelings and help guide them deeper into their heart.
And we both work together in our academy program, helping women do this. And trust me when I say this, if hundreds of women before you have been able to make these shifts, have been able to go from being desperate, totally confused, unable to know exactly what they're doing wrong, why these relationships just don't work out over and over again, there's no reason that you can't experience those same shifts. And we're going to give you so much information here to give you that kind of clarity. So, this is this one's tricky. Okay, so you're really successful in your career, or your business, entrepreneur. And we get a fair share of entrepreneurs, successful women, professionals in our academy program. We get other women as well. But these women are a specific type, right? So usually it's more type A personality, ambitious, go, 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 very capable, hyper capable, we could call it. And that I believe is part of what makes it extra frustrating for you. It's like you're so capable in so many areas, but when it comes to this area, it's kind of embarrassing. Like, it's painful, and it's also embarrassing that you're not able to make this work. And understand it's just because the skill set, we'll call it a skill set, that you need to show up in your relationship with a healthy man and also to attract healthy men is very different than everything else that you're doing in your life. It's literally the complete opposite, because what you're doing in your life requires a lot of masculine energy, requires energy where you are trying to get outcomes, you are leading, you are making things happen, and you're good at that. You're good at making, probably good at making decisions, you're good at making things happen. But when it comes to your love life, it's the exact opposite. Those skill sets aren't only going to not help you, they're actually going to hurt you a lot. And a great way to really introduce this is we're going to just talk about you, TC, because you're coming from that kind of mentality and environment. So share with me a little bit about where you came from prior to working with us in the academy.
Yeah, I was super type A. I don't think as type A as I could possibly have been, but I was very much to my achievements. I used that to form my identity. And I just got really good at being really good at a lot of stuff. And I wore that like a mask or like a jacket, and it led everywhere I went. And so I was never really one to accept help. I kept saying, oh, well, no one ever tried to help me, but I was completely missing the fact that whenever people would try to help me, because I had this identity of being good at everything and always knowing better, I would reject that help. And then obviously self-fulfilling prophecy, no one helped me, right? And that was a recurring theme in different parts of my life, whether friendships or relationships, problems in relationships, that was always a recurring theme. And then I also had, because I in my head I was so good at so many things, I also went into every situation trying to see how I could make it better. And when I joined the academy, that was no different because I distinctly remember one specific time when there was a certain assignment that I had to do, completely misinterpreted it and twisted it into I need to show Zach and Mark how to fix this academy in a way that I think it would run more efficiently. And I swiftly got the lesson that, approaching it from that standpoint and, leading with everything that you know and being super competent and not accepting help really doesn't inspire people. And uh, I didn't really get that reflection before, other than people just not wanting to be bothered with me. But in the academy was the first time that I actually had it reflected back to me, actually had to sit down and talk about it, actually became aware of what I was actually doing. Though it was not malicious, I did not intend to come across like that. I really had to sit for the first time with the impact of my actions in the academy. And that was really good for me.
We don't have to get into the exact, well, we might get into the exact activity that you're doing. So TC, you're on live stream and sharing some things about the academy, giving feedback. Tell me, how would you describe your energy? What was going on?
May I know if you mean while I was
Yeah,
sharing
like
feedback?
on live. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, extremely penetrative and very loud and strong and wrong. This is how it's supposed to be done. And I distinctly remember saying, I would do it like this, and I wouldn't work with anybody who wouldn't do it like this. And just imagine what that was like. But there was no vulnerability, no softness, no openness, no space for me to even receive what I was asking for. Yeah.
One of the examples, I think I brought this on these videos at least once or twice before. An example of a penetrative woman who I actually love. I would never be in a relationship with her, but I really love. She's hilarious. Is Judge Judy, and I use this as an example because basically everybody in the world knows who she is, right? So you can feel, and I really want women to understand the difference here of what I'm talking about energetically. Very, you can feel that strong energy, like you don't want to mess with Judge Judy, not just because she's a judge. It doesn't matter, you meet her on the street, you don't want to mess with her. She has that strength, we can call it that power, that don't mess with me kind of attitude, which works really well as a judge, works really well as as a lawyer, as a doctor in some ways, and a lot of businesses, especially high up as an executive. But it really works absolutely horribly in relationships. And it's like TC, for example, everyone feel into TC's sweet, lovely energy, which is very different than it was a few years ago. When you identify with being strong, powerful, whatever, it becomes really hard to let that, we'll call it Judge Judy energy go. And I'm not saying like, hey, this is how you're speaking, like a Judge Judy energy, because we, there's going to be a range. Judge Judy is right at the far end of the range, whereas TC, you're right at the exact other side of the spectrum. And when you're anywhere in the masculine side of that spectrum, it's going to be repelling the masculine instinct, and it's going to be repelling masculine men. You can even, and this is probably what you were doing, TC. I can't remember because it was a few years ago. I can't remember the specifics, but you can be like consciously trying to soften yourself when you're basically Judge Judy, and it's still going to come off as masculine. Like the reason
Yeah.
TC speaking this way is like very soft, and you can just connect with her really easily, is because she's done this work for years to really let go of all of the guards, the judgment, everything that's over top of that kind of energy. And it's that kind of stuff. It's the penetration, the judgment, the needing to get an outcome, right? That works so well in business and career that really doesn't get any kind of outcomes in your love life. Doesn't matter how good you are at it, your business life, it's going to completely backfire in your relationship 100%. So penetrative TC, and tell me more about the kind of mentality that you were kind of reaching for back then, the outcomes.
I wanted to be taken seriously. I wanted to be seen as smart. More importantly, I wanted people to know that they shouldn't mess with me. And that actually came from, and on my calls when I talk to women, it comes from the same place. That came from just years of having that happen, being bullied, being stepped on, all that stuff, and wanting to stop that from happening. And I didn't know a better way to stop that from happening than to become so big and bad that no one would ever think about messing with me. And it was simply a defense mechanism, actually, because what I really wanted was for people to love me so much, people to cherish me and adore me so much that they wouldn't dream of, bullying me or, saying unkind things to me. But I didn't know how to go about it. And I thought the only way to beat them was to become them and to become better. There's that theme again, better than them at their game. And I succeeded on that front for a long time. I remember even being in college and people actually being afraid of me. Like, oh, I don't want to, maybe, should you call TC or should I call TC? I don't want to call TC. And also, I was a manager in my career for a number of years, and that was also the general thing. Oh my God, I messed up. I don't want to call TC. And I, looking back, I feel so much shame about that. But I remember at the time, although I didn't want people to be afraid of me, I thought, good. So that way I can ensure that if they were even thinking of trying anything with me, they won't because they're scared of me. I'd rather them be scared of me than not. And then,
If what TC has just shared so far is resonating with you, or you're like, man, that's really describing me, give this video a like right now. Give it a
yeah,
like and be sure to subscribe to this channel because you're going to get so much more like this. Even if it doesn't perfectly describe you, it's okay. If you're still tuned in this far, you're probably liking this video, and we're going to be covering a lot of aspects of this because it's not just what TC's sharing, but this is a big part of it, right? Like the defense mechanism of not wanting to be messed with in some way. So it all comes down to safety. And this is true for all of women's control patterns, right? All the ways that you are pushing away devotion from a man, all the ways that you are pushing away healthy masculine men and might be attracting emasculated men if you're single right now, or if that's been your pattern in the past, it all comes down to you trying to create that safety for yourself. These are childhood patterns. They're patterns that were the best that you knew at the time. Nobody was there to take care of you in a better way and teach you in a better way to give you healthier ways of showing up. So you did everything that you knew how. And it may have worked the best it could have back then. It's just that now it's giving you the exact opposite of what you actually need. So, safety. Tell me more about the safety aspect of it for you, TC. You mentioned bullying. Tell me, where did this come from and why did you feel like this was the only option?
um, well,
Or were you
uh,
conscious enough to think of it that way? You might not have been. Tell me
oh
that
yeah,
too.
it was
Okay.
fully on purpose
Yeah.
because I was thinking back to when I was younger. I think I mentioned it previously on the video. I grew up very sheltered, actually. I grew up with people looking out for me, and I never really had to defend myself that much growing up. Not saying I had a great childhood. There were certain things that obviously went awry, but um I would actually get picked on a lot, and that started from prep school. So and it took me a while to understand why, because I was really meek, but I was always in the books, and I always had something I wanted to share with the teacher, and for other reasons as well. People saw me, and they just, whether it was principals, because even principals when I was growing up of schools, they took a strong dislike to me very quickly, and I couldn't figure out why. But anyhow. So all throughout prep school, I was bullied, teased, all of that. And then in high school, and I also wore like really big glasses and with a string, and I had like an embroidered backpack that pulled. And so that was an easy target. And I got into high school, and for the first semester, I was bullied. And then I joined a pageant, and then I won. And then everything flipped on its head, where people stopped bullying me for being nerdy and soft, and they started bullying me for I don't know, may know how to say kind of because in my estimation, or I have a story that a lot of it was jealousy, especially after I won that pageant.
Could
So
be.
yeah, and so I was bullied a lot based on that, and I couldn't figure out what to do. And then I'm like, huh. So I studied these people, and I'm like, what are they doing? They're being really not very loud, but just very big and puffed up, and they're mean, and all that. Maybe I should become exactly like that, and then they'll stop because I was nothing like that. I was like, but and so I studied them and I adopted their personalities. I'm like, okay, so nobody messes with this person. What is it about this person that would make me afraid to even mess with them? I'm gonna be exactly like that. And that's how it started. And then I experimented with it for a while, completely out like a fish out of water for the first few times. But then I had, all this resentment and anger like to fuel me because it had been years of it happening. And then I started believing it. I started believing that, yeah, I can actually. And then I started saying the wildest things but with no tact. Like that's exactly what I need to do. Just not have any tact and just say the worst types of things to people. And if someone says even the slightest bit of a mean thing to me, I'll just go just like way up, way higher than them and say the meanest thing I could possibly find to say to them. And that's how it started. And that was my defense mechanism. That made people weak in the knees whenever they had to confront me about anything. And that was my safety blanket, but that was not at all who I was. It wasn't until years later that I actually started to lean into that and become that really.
You're opening up a really actually a lot of topics. There's a lot of
Yeah.
directions that we could go here. So first of all, give this video a like, subscribe to this video if you're to this channel if you're still here, because we're going to give you so much more just on this video. We're going to keep going, but also there's just so much on this channel to help you understand this full picture about what we're talking about right now is how you got here, right? How you got to a place where you're not being fully taken care of, where you're not being fully cherished, where you're not being fully led by a healthy masculine man. And every woman's going, well, most women, depending on when this happened to, is going to have their story. Tell me below, when did you, like looking back into your life, when did you become wounded? It might not be the exact same kind of wound as TC, but there's always going to be a wound where you learned in some way to cover up your heart. That is a form of masculinization because coming out into the world, like my daughter, for example, she's just over 3 years old, and she's well, she's very interesting in many ways, but she's still so innocent, right? There is that vulnerability, that heart on her sleeve. Part of it because she can't help it, because she's she gets dysregulated, but she's not hiding anything. She's not trying in any way to be tough. She's not trying in any way to be strong. She's not trying to prove herself to others or to herself, that I am good enough, that I am worthy, that I am capable, that I am, successful, that entire word. And hopefully that would never happen at the age of 3, a child trying to be successful. It tends to come out later, right? But over time, a little girl like that is going to become more and more wounded and more guarded. She's going to close her heart, and she's going to develop these control patterns to stay safe and not be who she really is. Because who she really is so, and I'm talking about every girl, not just talking about my little girl, every woman, every little girl, any age, deep down, there is that beautiful, vulnerable, sensitive part of you that is
Yeah.
fragile and tender, and you don't want it to get hurt, right? So you develop these strategies to stay safe in some kind of way, to not get hurt. And of course, in your case, TC, this was, tell me roughly when this was, like, 10 years old, before
Yeah,
high
around
school.
around around 10, and definitely the heaviest between 12 and 15.
Yeah, okay. And of course, there's going to be other things that had happened to you up until that point, but that was obviously a really pivotal point for you. And so,
Yeah.
with you watching right now, tell me, can you remember any pivotal point for you? There's going to be really early childhood stuff, and then there can be stuff that happens later. And school, both, I call it, what did you, oh, you call it prep school. Is, yeah,
Yeah,
that's,
it was
tell
a
me if that's a
private
private
school.
school. Yeah, it's a private school. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I went to public school, so just elementary school. Obviously there's a lot of problems in elementary school, and typically in high school it's worse. I would say for girls it's worse than it is for boys. That's just my judgment, my observation. But like, to it's like, here's what it's like: putting a woman out into the jungle. It's like, go survive, right? How are you going to do anything other than learn how to be an Amazonian woman? Like, learn how to bash gorillas over the head or something to survive, because otherwise you're dead. And that's how it is in the school system, especially high school, and tragically for many children, even their home is like that. There is no safety at home, and that's going to really do a number on you if that's the case. So tell me, what has your experience been? When did you notice this? And if I when I read these comments, because I will, I really want to see what these other stories are, and I might start other videos based on these. And we probably heard them all in the academy, because you might think your situation is unique. We've heard pretty much everything. We've seen pretty much everything, and there's always something that wounded. Another big one is one of your first relationships where you got burned, right? Like, you might have remembered being really open, sensitive, vulnerable. You tried to just be loving and giving, and the man was a taker. He was a user. Instead of protecting your heart the way he was supposed to, he took advantage of you. He hurt you, he used you, he cheated on you, whatever. And what's that going to do to a woman? Close her off, cause her to protect herself. And so none of the stuff that me, TC, anyone else that I end up having on this channel ever talk about, it's never about blaming you. Okay, there's no blame in any of this. This is just about showing you how this happened, and you did the best that you could at the time, and then giving you that responsibility to show you, here's how you can now shift this. Here's how you can open back up in a safe way, because we don't want you to get hurt. We want you to do it safely, where you're actually going to be able to attract that care and devotion so that you can be fully open and not be unsafe. And there's a pretty important distinctive difference there. So, TC, can you remember, prior to this happening to you, any other big events in earlier childhood where you noticed you were closing off, or were you relatively quite open at that point?
Well, there were certain things that happened to me very early on that caused me to close off, uh, which I don't know if I could talk about here.
You can talk about it. Just gotta, like, tell me if you're comfortable talking about it first of all.
Perhaps not.
Okay, you don't have to. We can save that for another one, or for never. That's all right.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But
So there was stuff. Yeah.
there were quite a bit of stuff that caused me to kind of close off very early on. But you mentioned something about first relationships, right? And one thing that I share with women, and as something that I observe also on my calls or just in the academy with women when we talk about childhood, because on my calls we talk a lot about childhood because most times that's where it starts from. And one thing that I've observed is that certain wounds may have been exacerbated later on in life, but you can always, almost always trace them back to something that happened in childhood. And when you mentioned first relationship, I started thinking, so my first relationship, the one that I talk about from time to time in the academy, this was actually someone I knew when I was 14 who went to the all boys version of the all girls boarding school that I went to. So I knew him from back then. And he was actually one of the people who would bully the other boys. And so when we met, I think I- what's the thing that we always say that some you when you wear a certain mask, you attract certain people to that mask. And I wore this hard shell of a mask by that point. And I always say you can either attract someone who wants to be bullied or you can attract someone who's like, oh, you're a bully? I'm the bigger bully. We're going to see who's the bigger bully of both of us. And that's kind of what I attracted. That wound that I had when I was younger, I grew up and I attracted somebody who was the exact type of person I wanted to protect myself from.
Tell me how that worked out for you.
it didn't work out. You know, for the first time since I'd started behaving like I was the biggest bully on the planet, I met someone who was actually a bigger one than me. I was no match for him. And the fact that I would not soften and I would get stronger only enraged him even more. And I could not handle that. And so, yeah, I went through it in
Yeah.
that relationship in a lot of ways.
If for any women listening who tend to get into fights with a man, right? You got that, and you probably do if you have that, more the type A assertive kind of energy. There, it's not a fight that you can ever win. And I'm just going to use an example in from my relationship too. So I picked a wife, and part of there's many things I really love about my wife and loved back then as well. And we'll call it her strength. Like I could just feel her worth. Like I could feel that she wasn't willing to just lay down and take it, basically, to just be a doormat. Those women do not attract me, and they don't really attract anybody. And by doormat, I don't mean feminine. There's a world of difference there. So I could feel that from her. It's like kind of the feeling I can't get away with anything, with everything with her. And that's actually an important, very important feeling for a man to have. The problem is that the women who tend to give off that energy, they give it off in a more masculine way, as my wife did to an extent. She was more soft spoken, at least at first, but it started to come out later on as I became more and more obviously not considerate in the way that I should have been. And so we ended up getting into conflicts. And I, despite me, well, first of all, a healthy masculine man isn't getting into conflicts with a woman, first of all. But there is that masculine instinct that wants to fight. Okay? That's what should be out to like protecting a man's woman from bears and bad people and all of that. So if my wife were to get into a fight with me, I never back down. Now, a man should ideally be leading the woman and himself into resolution, which I didn't know how to do, but I would never back down. And my wife would, who most men would eventually back down to, that was her experience, this was different. And TC, it's sounding like you experienced something similar. I probably wasn't nearly as toxic as the man, that relationship, but
Yeah.
it caused so much toxicity because it's never something that you can win. Doesn't matter. You can be as strong and powerful and whatever as you want, but the more that you resist, the more that you go into judgment, the more that you fight back, the less that you are going to be meeting a man's need. Because what does a man
Yeah.
need? A man needs
Fact.
reverence. He needs a deep
Mhm.
respect from a woman. He needs to be treated like a man, even when he's not respectable like a man. Right? He should be always. That's what's actually going to inspire most men. I'm not going to say every man, but most men into a devotional frequency. When a man's need is not being met, like you're basically, if you're treating him, I don't even want to say like a child because a child shouldn't be yelled at either. But just for a lack of a better term, you're treating a man like a child, he's going to start acting like a child. If you're not looking up at him with reverence, if you don't know how to do that using feminine communication, which we're going to be talking about, so stay tuned. Don't stay kind of the second half, however much time we got some time to talk about it. If you're not talking that way with a man, if you're not showing up that way with a man, you can't possibly win by trying to be powerful in that way. A man will either break you down or you will break him down. And either way, you lost big time. I
Mhm.
don't even know which one's worse. Both are terrible.
Yep. Yeah,
Tell
you're
me anything
right.
that came up around that, TC.
Oh, when you said he would break you down or you'll break him down, I completely reverted to when I was that meek little girl
Yeah,
who would get, stepped on and broken down, before I put on this mask. I
yeah,
reverted to her easily. I was beside myself with how easily he got to that point where it could happen. And I was no match for him, and I stopped trying just because I was still, because that young part of me, that meek, timid part of me, didn't actually have self-worth. Because so that's kind of what you talk about with the difference between being a feminine woman and being a doormat. when I was little, I mean, I had no real control over it, but when I was younger, I would describe myself as a bit of a doormat because I didn't want to
Yeah,
get bullied and, all of that. And so when I got into that relationship when I was 18, I went right back there. And, that's the dangerous part of it when you're dealing with someone who wants to approach situations like that.
absolutely. If that describes you, give this video a like. Make sure you subscribe to this video, this channel. Yeah, absolutely. This is important, and this I've experienced this as well, like from the other side. So I will never back down in any kind of relationship. Never have. Just I'm not wired that way. Men typically are not going to be wired that way unless they've been really broken. Like their masculine instinct is very much offline. As many for many men, it is in our society. Women are okay. So women are instinctually wired to follow a man's leadership. And some of the things, if I haven't triggered you yet in this video, especially if you're new to my channel, some of what I'm going to be sharing is going to be triggering. Try to just stick around and feel everything that's coming up for you. You are instinctually wired to follow, and this doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you less than. It doesn't make you inferior to a man in any kind of way. It's just the way that it's supposed to be. For a healthy relationship to function, there has to be one leader and one follower. That doesn't mean that the man is leading selfishly and that like none of your needs are being met and he's just going to do whatever he wants. There's lots of relationships like that. They're extremely toxic, unhealthy. I wouldn't want any woman to get into a relationship like that or to continue to follow a man who is like that because your needs need to be considered for, you need to be treated as worthy. And I describe this as an analogy like a salsa dance. Man is leading start to finish. You're following from start to finish, but he's leading the dance for you because you matter, because he wants to give you an incredible dance. And so when women develop control patterns like guarding yourself, like being really assertive, like just being go, all of this kind of stuff. Typically, it's going to be relatively superficial because that's not who you really are. That is just the thing that is protecting who you really are. And who are you really? Underneath all that, you're just a soft, warm ball of goo. It just this like I'll just go back to my daughter again, right? And this isn't to say like, hey, you're a 3-year-old child, but you do have that childlike innocence inside of you, and you might be not. It's tragic if you don't, but you might not be in touch with that little girl inside of you. But it's that innocence and that vulnerability that is the true essence of who you are. And because that is your essence, which is feminine, right? Receptive, open, following, submissive, vulnerable. I don't know if I said that one. Because that's your essence, it's very hard to remain strong with a man who is also strong because men are innately supposed to be strong in that way. We're the ones that are supposed to be leading. Now, of course, in your situation, TC, that's toxic leading, right? He's trying to, it sounds like you're subjugated to a degree. Tell me if
Mhm.
that's correct. Yeah,
Very
right.
much so.
Which, by the way, if you're new to my channel, subjugation is not healthy leadership. Subjugation has nothing to do with submission, which is honoring your heart when you're following a man. The only way that you can truly submit to a man is when you're honoring your heart, and you can only do that using healthy feminine communication, which, of course, DC back then you didn't know. So when the strength mask falls off, there's just the gooey doormat that's underneath. And I know so many of our clients who start off like they got the strong exterior have experienced something like that, and of course that's just one more wounding, that's just one more painful experience to put under your belt. So in that relationship, TC, tell me, were you consciously aware that like the mask or that strength came off? What did you think about yourself at that point when you were in it at that point?
Oh, I thought very poorly of myself. I had the lowest self-esteem that I probably ever had in that relationship. And I think back to what you said about a man just being naturally wired to lead and women being naturally wired to follow. Uh, I believed everything that I was told, and the things that I got told about myself were that I was insignificant, that I was nothing. So I started
Yeah.
to by someone who still wouldn't leave me alone, by the way. But I was told all of these things and I started to believe them. And so I didn't know how to shift out of that relationship, how to shift out of that dynamic, and I didn't know anything about feminine communication because or being feminine and having feminine self-worth. I was a kid, right? So I didn't
Yeah.
really, in the grand scheme of things, I didn't really know how to shift out of that. And the only reference point I had for being soft was being a doormat up until when I started to put all this armor on. And so I reverted to that thinking that it would shift or dynamic or save me somehow. But obviously things got worse from there.
Yeah. We're really close to, we're going to talk about how to shift this. But first, the doormat thing, TC, tell me in childhood, would you describe yourself as like compliant, like more doormat type with your parents, or was it different in some way? Did you know how to
It was very
communicate your needs, feelings?
It was very different with my parents. My father less so because he was a certain way and had certain strict rules and all of that. But I was and part of the reason I was, I guess, not liked at a young age by even adults was because I would say things like staying a child's place wasn't
Mm,
necessarily something that I was taught growing up. And so I would have, opinions. When I started to actually have that low self-esteem kind of doormat was when I went to school and
mm,
I was around the teachers and the other students. That's when it started. And then it got worse because when I went to high school, it wasn't just high school where you go to school for a couple hours and you come home. It was boarding school. I could only go home once a month for weekends
mm.
or the holidays. So
Yeah.
at school was when I had most of that influence, especially at around like 12, 13, 14 years old. My gosh, you're so impressionable then. And that was my influence back then. The teachers and also the school that I went to, they were very strict to put it lightly. If you've, like I said before, if you've ever watched Matilda and Miss Trunchbull, that was more like the majority of the teachers that I had there. So there was no space for self-expression or any kind of
Interesting.
opinions at all.
Interesting. Yeah. And this is why, just a side note before we start getting into the what you need to do to shift this, it's so important for parents to be actively teaching their children how to communicate. Right? Like I am teaching my daughter feminine communication already. I'm teaching her all the stuff that I teach women in my academy. Well, not all the stuff yet because she's too young for it, but I'm teaching her what she can handle right now because I want to make sure that she always has a voice and also, of course, role modeling how she is going to be, how she should be treated, right? Especially by a man. Especially, I mean, my wife as well, but especially that role modeling is so important. How a father treats his daughter because that's a little girl's first relationship, and if that first relationship goes badly, well, then there's going to be a lot of problems that come from it. So a father needs to be doing two main things. One, he needs to be cherishing her in the sense that giving her love, accepting her, making sure that she feels safe. The father's emotionally centering himself, giving her care, providing for her, taking away a lot of her burdens. It doesn't mean that she doesn't have to do anything, but basically providing an environment where she doesn't have to learn masculine control patterns to be safe in any way or to get love in any kind of way. And then the second thing that a father should be doing is he should be actively leading her to be the best girl and then eventually woman that she should be, which means, well, one thing, teaching her feminine communication, giving her a voice, leading her into her feelings, solving problems like communication problems when they come up with her, showing her how to solve issues in her life. So giving a lot of that kind of guidance, which a lot of girls, like, I mean, it's a lot of fathers that just don't know. So it's got a lot of broken people, mothers as well, just really broken people. So what's going to happen is it's going to create more broken children who grow up to be broken people, and the cycle continues. So, so feminine communication. I promise we're going to talk about this in one moment. Before we do, I'm going to briefly just talk about how this is really relevant to what we do in our academy program. So, what we are doing for women, this is the best way for women to heal. Okay, you can do this, and what we're going to be talking about next. You can do this without our academy. It's just that it's harder. It takes a lot longer. But what you essentially need is a man or men who are providing you safety to express yourself, to make mistakes, to be wrong, to be dysregulated, to do all the things that you are afraid of doing. Okay? And also provide the space for you to be soft, for you to be vulnerable, right? A non judgmental space. Because if you do this with a man, hypothetically, like say it's a really, like maybe your past boyfriend who just reactive as well, TC?
Oh,
Quite reactive or
not
not so
in
much?
the not in the overly assertive way. It was the cool, calm, collected kind of
Okay.
uh what's that word that I'm looking for? There's just very cool and calm but deadly.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, so and there's going to be a lack of safety in that too. It's just going to be different. But
Hmm.
yeah, so without that safety, you try to make these shifts that we're going to be talking about. And what happens? Well, you're going to make mistakes because nobody just figures it all out and everything's perfect. So you have to expect to make tons of mistakes. You're going to be in your masculine energy. Sometimes you're going to accidentally be disrespectful. You're going to be terrified of being vulnerable because you're not feeling that safety, that you're not feeling that non-judgment. So why would you just open up your heart when you're expecting someone to stab a knife in it? It's really challenging. So one of the big things that we're doing in the Academy for Women is being fully safe, right? And we're actually repairing that relationship that you have with the masculine. And the masculine is the caretaker role, right? It is the, and it could be, a woman, but it's, and that's one of the reasons we have TC in our academy, because there's so much value that she brings, but in a different way, in a much more feminine way. But you need that masculine caretaking role for you to open to be taken care of. And if you have that really assertive personality, the personality of I'm going to take care of myself, I have to take care of myself. I got to get things done because if I don't get them done, who's going to do them? You've basically been taught, probably throughout your life, that it's that you're not going to be taken care of, that it's not safe for you to stop because your needs are going to remain unmet. And that's a really deep limiting belief that you're operating off of. And what needs to shift is that deep belief needs to be healed. You need to recognize at first that it's a limiting belief. That's what we're doing here. It's like, oh, wow. So, like, this assertive personality and like me being kind of a boss babe and being really strong and everything, yeah, it's all because of that limiting belief. It's all because of that. It's all to self protect yourself. And that's it. That's not who you are at all. So when you get that safety, you might not immediately realize it either. You might not recognize it because you're not familiar with it. But over time, what we're helping women do is learn how to drop all of that stuff, learn how to just be truly vulnerable, open up, and practice communicating in a way that is going to inspire men. Right? Like my masculine instinct is very much online. So I know when a woman is being feminine and I know when she's not being feminine. I know when she's being manipulative to a certain degree and I know when she's being fully clean. And so we're helping you let go of anything that's in the way of you just being fully vulnerable. Manipulation, by the way, that's another control pattern to stay safe. It's all just control patterns, all the way down. So you're learning how to do that. And then you're able to just operate in this way all the time, emotionally naked, but with the, we'll call it discernment and the self worth necessary to flow away from a lack of devotion. Like from a man in, sorry, from a specific situation in your current relationship or from a man entirely in many situations. That's when your self worth is going to be online so that you can basically protect yourself without being in masculine energy. And that is possible. So the masculine energy is basically a, what's the word? It's like a compensation for a lack of self-worth, a lack of feminine self-worth. That's what it is. And you need that safety to build that self-worth. So before we talk about the feminine communication stuff and the shifts, if you are interested in working with us, TC, me, and my entire team, I would love to speak with you on a call. I would love to talk about your story, whatever's been going on for you in your life to get you to this point, figure out what your control patterns are, and give you some feedback, some coaching, some guidance on how to shift it. The way you're going to book that call, which is free, it's a discovery call to find out if our program is right for you and also to get some guidance right from the beginning. Go below this video, open up the description. Link is right there, relationshipyourdreams.com. Watch the video on that page. You're going to hear from our other clients, including TC, and then you can decide whether you'd like to do that call with me. That video is going to be useful for you no matter what, so watch that. And then if it feels right, book that call. We'll talk and we'll find out if our program's right for you. So the way that you're going to shift this, so let's just say you're not ready for the academy yet. Well, guess what? We can help you in this video and we can help you in all of my other videos. So I'm putting all these pieces together for you. You need to do a few main things. Number one, actually, I'm going to even stop. Before we do this, I'm going to just hear from you, TC. Tell me, for you, with what you were learning, what was the most important shift that you made? And I'm going to talk about other ones too, but what was the most important one?
The most important shift that I made was actually learning how to say what I was feeling
Yeah.
instead of using those defense mechanisms to stop or to try to stop something that I didn't want to happen. I just started to share what was coming up for me in my heart. And it was so difficult for me to be vulnerable because I'd closed my heart off for so long. I didn't, in my mind, from my personal experience and what I thought vulnerability was, in my head, vulnerability got me hurt. Um,
Mhm.
Closing off and wearing that mask kept me protected. And so the biggest shift that I made was to feel the fear and do it anyway. Just say the thing anyway. Oh, I feel really sad, and really embody that sadness, not just saying the word, because like anybody could say I feel sad, but are you actually showing that part of you? Can he or she or whoever you're talking to, that person, can that person see that and feel that in you? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was the biggest shift that I made.
So imagine this. So that's the most important thing I would say for probably most women, almost all women. It's the ability to to just be fully open with your feelings in that kind of way without anything else. So imagine this for a moment. You are fully emotionally naked. What does that mean? Think of all the feelings that you feel throughout the day. Now, you might not be feeling much. If you're a boss babe, you might be dissociated most of the time. You don't even know what you're feeling. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, you feel sad multiple times a day. Sometimes you feel some anger. Feels you're in touch with your fear. You're feeling needy. You wish that you had a bit more affection from your man. So neediness comes up. Maybe you feel horny with your man. You feel happy as well. You feel joy. You feel gratitude, all those positive feelings. So you're feeling dozens of different feelings like throughout the day. Imagine sharing every single time you were feeling something. Now, I'm not saying you would have to do that, like, because then you're going to have conversations only about your feelings all the time. And that's not, there's more to conversations than just that. Obviously, you want to be able to do that with the really big feelings that really matter, 100%. Imagine if you had no fear of doing that. Imagine if whenever you were feeling something, even like, let's just, I like the needy one, the neediness one. Imagine just telling your man or your future man, if you're single, I feel really needy right now. I'm really feeling needy for affection, let's say. Imagine not just sharing that, but also having a man. It's like, oh, sweetheart, I didn't know you were feeling that way. Come here. Come get a big hug. And he wraps his big arms around you, puts you on the couch on his lap, and you guys are just talking and kissing and cuddling and whatever. And it was literally that easy. Like, you literally just have to expose what you're feeling, and your man wants to provide a solution for you, whether that's reassurance, affection, time with you, accountability, something that he recognized in himself he should be shifting. That's the kind of simplicity that we're talking about here. This is the kind of shifts that we're seeing in our academy program with women. These are the kind of shifts that are absolutely possible with you. And the main thing that will be stopping you from that, like, yes, having the language is important as well, but the biggest thing is the fear of doing it. It's the excuses of why you shouldn't be doing it. And until you're willing to move through all of those fears, you're not going to get anywhere close to having that level of care in your life. There's and one other thing, there's the fear and there is the, like I said, excuses. Part of those excuses aren't just necessarily like, oh, he wouldn't care. Those excuses can be more about like, oh, like that's weak. That's not attractive. And I'm telling you as a man, I'm telling you as a man whose masculine instinct is online. I'm telling you as a man who is taking care of his wife right now in this kind of way. Not in this exact moment, but an hour ago. That is attractive. That is a turn on. That is inspiring. But it's also about how you do it, because using neediness as an example, and for that strong woman, TC, tell me before I continue, that strong woman, how much resistance did you have to the neediness one?
Oh my gosh, I had so much resistance. I'd rather tell you good night at 7 p.m. to get your attention than say, oh, I feel really needy. You
Yeah.
know, I feel really needy. And one thing too that I did, and what a lot of women do is that they start a fight,
Well,
right? Oh, you never have time for me,
sorry, say that last
right?
part again. You cut out. The mic might not have been
Oh,
close.
I was saying one thing that I used to do, and certainly what a lot of women I talk to would rather do now is start a fight, right? That's their pattern. Start a fight. Oh, you never have time for me. I'm going out with the girls or have a nice life for, the slightest inconvenience. You text him that and hoping that he'll then reach back out to you. And it's so much easier to just say how you feel in the moment. I feel so needy. I feel really sad. I wish you were here. Things like that, rather than having that guard up because the guard that I had, it really stifled and pushed away the connection that I was really wanting deep down that I couldn't bring myself to say. And that's why I answered your question like that, the way I did before when you said the biggest shift that I made was actually sharing what I was feeling because it was actually the hardest thing to do. And not only because it was hard to say the words, but also because it was hard for me to connect to that feeling because it was
Yeah.
so buried under layers of wounding.
Yeah, and I'm sure many women watching this can relate to that, because if you are feeling needy, but you're also feeling, let's say, fear and or maybe resentment for Amanda's not being able to mind read and giving you exactly what you need, then you might not, and you're also in judgment of yourself that, like, it's weak to feel needy, then you might not even be aware of it. But neediness is actually a beautiful feeling. Since we're on the topic, neediness is a beautiful feeling. There's nothing wrong with it at all. There's a lot wrong with how women typically go about expressing their neediness, and I have been on the receiving end of many different ways that have not worked with me at all. But when you can be truly vulnerable with that, it's as beautiful as anything else. So this also goes, I mentioned the fear is can be holding you back. A big part of this is about self-acceptance. It all comes down to self-acceptance. There's the fear of his lack of acceptance, which is actually also a reflection of your lack of acceptance in some way. But a big part of it, even other than how the man's responding, can you just be in your room by yourself, be feeling that neediness, and realize how beautiful of a feeling that is? Recognize that there's nothing wrong with it. And that goes for all of your feelings, your anger, your sadness, your shame, your guilt, horniness, joy, gratitude, fear, all of the rest. No matter what it is that's bringing that up, that self acceptance is of critical importance. And if you're not accepting yourself when those feelings are coming up, you're kind of torturing yourself a lot of the time if you're actually judging yourself. And TC, I know this is a big part of what you help women do. I mean, the men as well, but you do it in a different way and probably a deeper way in the academy. Tell me what you are doing with women when it comes to helping them accept themselves and accept their feelings.
Oh, yeah, that's my favorite part. What we do in the academy is we sit and feel, and we do feeling expeditions, right? And what those are feelings expeditions. Feeling expeditions are, it's an exercise that we do where we really tune into what we're feeling in our bodies. And when that feeling comes up, for example, we sit and we do that, we talk about sadness being a big one. Most women that I do the feeling expeditions with, especially women who have just joined the academy, we're typically holding a lot of sadness. That's what prompted us to join the academy in the first place. And so when we sit there with those feelings and we spend the time to actually do kind of like a breath meditation to come in to be one with our bodies so we can actually start feeling what's deeper in our hearts. And if we get to that point of sadness, a lot of women will want to step away from that. They want to dissociate from it. And one of the biggest reasons they can't disassociate from it is because we actually are sitting with the body and all the sensations. So there's nothing that we're doing to distract ourselves from that. So we're sitting with it and we're actually feeling it. We're feeling the sadness. And I always like to give visualizations for people. And one of the visualizations that I give is to imagine when you reach that feel, when you sit in that heart space and your sadness comes up to you, imagine that sadness is a little girl that looks just like you when you were 5 or 7. And I get to see how they actually see themselves in that moment. If they would reject that little girl, some people do, because they also weren't accepted when they were 5 and 7 in their feelings. So they turn around and they reject that little girl. Some people start to have compassion for that little girl. And what we end up doing is actually sitting with that little girl. In your mind's eye, just sit with her and just observe her until you slowly start to move towards her. When you finally move towards her, just wrap your arms around her and just stay there. And people, the women that I talk to respond to that so well, maybe not right away, but as that's why feeling expeditions is something that you do over and over again, because not every day is going to be a great feeling day, right? You're just not going to be there sometimes. So we do that over and over again, and we actually get to the point where we're sitting with that little girl and we're accepting that she's there, which is the sadness, because she represents the sadness. We're accepting that she's there, and we start to feel love and compassion for her, but she is actually you. She's not somebody outside of you. She is you. And when people really understand that, that helps them to really accept themselves and their sadness, because they're accepting the sadness as a visualization of a little girl in their mind. But when they understand that, hey, this is not just some person outside of you, this is still you, they're like, oh yeah, I feel so much love and compassion for myself and my sadness and the little girl that I was when I was 7 and I didn't get my needs met. Yeah, that's my
Yeah.
favorite part. I love that.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, and
I
and
almost went into a meditation right there.
yeah, I could see. Got the eyes closed and everything. The self acceptance is a pivotal early piece to all of this, because if you are not able to fully be with your feelings, first of all, it's going to be very difficult for you to communicate your feelings at all if you're not even aware of what you're feeling. But also, even if you are aware of what you're feeling, if you're not comfortable with them, if you can't love that little girl inside of you when she's feeling that sadness or that anger or the neediness or anything else, then what you're going to do is, well, you're going to do one of two things. Probably either hide it because you're believing this is yucky stuff. You know, a man, like, if I believe it's yucky, of course a man is going to believe it's yucky as well, right? It's like handing him it's like a piece of poop. Like, no, he's not going to want that. But when you realize that your feelings are beautiful, all of your feelings are beautiful, when you realize that they're actually attractive, that they are inspirational, it becomes much easier to open yourself to a man and to anyone to share what's actually inside of you. So it's actually going to help with a lot of the fear that you are feeling, the more that you accept yourself and the more that you accept all of your feelings. The other thing is, if you were to have trouble just fully being with your feelings and accepting your feelings, accepting that little girl inside of you, when those feelings come up, when that little girl is having some kind of temper tantrum in some way, if you do express the feelings, you're going to kind of want to get them out, like kind of put them onto the man. It's like, ooh, these are uncomfortable, so here you take them. And then that's one of the ways that a man is going to be like, well, this is yucky too. I don't like how this feels either, because you're not actually being vulnerable with your feelings. You're trying to dump those feelings onto him. And there's many ways you can do that, right? Like when you're angry, you're going to tend to penetrate with judgments. It's like, well, you did this, or you're always doing this, or this happened because of, you doing this. Lots of judgment, lots of blame. If you're feeling neediness and you're trying to share your feelings, it's going to come across as you trying to like cling, you trying to grasping your little tentacles, your emotional tentacles in him, and he's going to feel that. And that's not vulnerability either. So that's not going to inspire, that's going to repel him. If you're feeling fear, you're going to tend to control. You might be asking a whole bunch of questions, maybe being accusational. You might be like very penetrative questions. That's typically with fear. Also, judgments can come out with fear. And I'm just giving you a few possibilities. There's many other things you can do. But the point is, you're not being vulnerable with your feelings. The feelings that you feel uncomfortable with, that you're not fully accepting and loving, you are putting onto the man in some way, getting a bad response from him, understandably, because it doesn't feel good to be kind of used in that way, dumped on in that way. And then what's the message that you get? Well, this man or men don't care about my feelings. My feelings are ugly, just like I thought. I should probably hide them. And the truth is, you got that reaction because you were hiding them behind all of all of those are control patterns, right? Anything other than true vulnerability, where well, we actually got to define vulnerability in a moment. Anything other than true vulnerability is a control pattern. It's going to be energetically masculine. It's you trying to stay safe and unfortunately actually co-creating a situation where you're going to likely not get that emotional safety that you need. TC, tell me how you would define vulnerability. What does that mean to you?
Vulnerability to me is being authentic and being honest with your fully honest with yourself first and foremost, and sharing those feelings, no matter how much you might judge them as ugly or problematic, or feelings, not judgments, sharing those feelings with a man specifically, but just with anybody, and being fully open to rejection.
Yeah. Yeah, and for a lot of women, unfortunately, you don't even know what authentic means, because if you've lived your life like you can think like I'm being authentic when really you're just judging, and it's like you're doing it out of fear unconsciously. You don't even realize that you're feeling that fear and that
Mhm.
this pattern is coming up because of the fear. So it might feel authentic in some kind of way, but underneath that is your true authentic self, which is, I'm not saying feminine communication is just about feelings. There's many aspects of feminine communication, but one of the big ones is absolutely feeling. So I feel sad. I feel angry. I feel shame. I feel guilt. I feel guilty, right?
Mhm.
Just, and in our academy, we teach women to use I feel statements. And the reason why, it's not about we're giving you scripts or anything. We're just helping you tap into that vulnerable feeling as easily as possible. And when you make an I feel statement, it's easier to really feel in to the feeling that you're feeling. So if you're feeling sad, for example, and you're like, okay, what am I feeling? I'm going to go on my chest. What's up? I feel sad. Of course, I'm not actually feeling sad, so I'm just pretending. But that allows you to open that layer, or it makes it a lot easier to. You can absolutely say, like, hey, I feel sad right now, and a man doesn't feel anything because you're speaking from up here. The idea
Not
of feminine
embodying it.
communication, yeah, you're not embodying it. The idea of feminine communication is to use it to open yourself. You're using it to be more vulnerable, to go deeper in yourself. And the words can help you do that. Tell me what you're feeling right now, TC.
I am feeling a lot of joy, but also some anxiety.
Tell me if that anxiety is because you've got to go in 3 minutes.
Yes,
Don't
it
worry.
is.
I'm taking care of you. I'm checking that time. I'm going to make sure that
Okay.
we're finished before then. We're actually going to wrap things up. So Feminine communication is all about teaching you how to let go of control. Sharing feelings vulnerably, that is an act of letting go of control. Another way to do it, one of the other forms of feminine communication, asking permission. May I have some help, or may I have some clarity? By the way, I cover all of this on other videos that I've done, so be sure to watch the next video after this and just keep it coming, because the more that you watch, the more that you're going to start to make sense of what feminine communication is. Another one is getting vulnerable with your problems, like not blaming a man for your problems, but like, I'm really struggling. You know what a problem is? I'm really struggling to communicate vulnerably with you. That's beautiful, right? And it's a problem about you. You're not saying, hey, you're being judgmental and you're not being safe right now, because now you're turning a beautiful problem into a judgment, a nasty judgment about him, which might be true, but there's no vulnerability in it. Expressing your needs as well, like I need more time with you, I need a hug. This is the basics of feminine communication, and it's not about scripts. It's about showing you how to let go of all the control patterns that you have learned to stay safe, all the control patterns that you've used to be successful, to not be vulnerable, to protect that little girl inside of you. So we're going to wrap things up because TC's got another call, and I want to make sure she's got enough time to get on for that. So thank you all for coming on. If you made it to the end and watch that next video, again, relationshipyourdreams.com if you want to book a call with me. I'll see you on that call. We'll have a great time. Otherwise, keep watching my videos and keep learning all of these pieces that are going to help you create the relationship of your dreams. It's absolutely possible for you. Don't give up on yourself. Learn to be that beautiful, vulnerable woman that you are. And I believe in you. Bye now.